Aloha, thanks for tuning in. This is our final part of our workshop series about growing food in high elevation puna. We're going to jump right into it, so thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy.
In your memory, so we have the pile of rotten logs. We've got the first layer of cinder soil on it. Now, this time we chose a nice shady spot under this nitrogen fixing pigeon pea. This petal eye is pretty small, so it's going to enjoy the shade. And then maybe next year, in the winter, you can trim it back and feed it to the tree. We're also going to plant some more support species, so don't tell anyone, don't tell on us, but we brought some albizia up just for Tony. He's not going to let them ever go to flower, so it's not a problem. So yeah, like we were saying, when we have these support species really close to the tree, when you drop them, it really feeds the tree heavily. And albizia have a nice dappled shade. It's really nice. Ice cream bean can be a really dark shade. Albizia is nice because you can grow things under it. You can grow grass under it. Yeah.
I live up at 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
Will they still grow up there?
Probably.
Okay.
Just don't let them go to seed.
Yeah,
totally. And again, I'll say it, I think these are better at mining minerals than ice cream bean or acacia. I think it's the ultimate.
Yeah, quickly.
It evolved on volcanic rock in the Pacific Ocean, so this is like the perfect tree. That's why it's so invasive, but the problem is the solution, right? So
What's the issue with letting that go to seed?
And they blow on the wind, so it can just spread through the whole ohia forest. And albisias do kill ohia trees. They just take over.
Because they get so big so fast.
Yeah.
And they just shade out.
Oh, okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
Silly question, but I just had to know.
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the wind
Because of all
borne.
the
Same
rain we
with
had,
same with eucalyptus. You know, the seeds blow in the wind. So if you let one get 100 feet tall, the seeds can be going miles.
And I heard that the seeds can stay dormant up to
Right.
like 7 years
Right.
in some cases. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so we definitely, when we break ground, we have albisias coming up. That's what these came from.
And how do you keep those from going to seed, if you don't mind me asking?
If you prune these once a year, heavily prune them back. So we pollard them, which means cutting it at a higher height. If you cut it around head height, the new branches are going to grow over the pathway, so you can walk right under them. Versus if you cut at the ground, you're going to have a bush, right? But also cutting at the ground can be easier because you can literally just rip the branches off, right? So depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to do, because the south and the west sun are usually the most intense. Those are the hottest parts of the day, are going to be midday to the afternoon. So I'm going to plant this so it gives it midday to afternoon sun. And you can see the nitrogen fixing nodules on these. So
Here, let me see that. So any nitrogen fixer, what he's saying is they have these little sacks. You probably can't really see them where you guys are at, but they're just little
You can see 'em from here.
nodules that, those are the nitrogen fixing things. So if you ever see a plant and you're like, I wonder if that's a nitrogen fixer, you can pull up the roots, and if they have the nodules on them, then that means it's a nitrogen fixer.
They look like perlite.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy.
So one misconception about nitrogen fixers is that they're dumping nitrogen into the plants around them. It's not actually true. They're actually using all of it, and they're still absorbing nitrogen from the environment. So the magic of the nitrogen fixer is when you chop and drop them, okay? Because let's take this pigeon pea right here. It's taking all of the nitrogen from the root nodules, and it's putting it into these seeds. So even if I chop this now, not all of that nitrogen's necessarily going back from the root nodules, because the nitrogen's up here in the seed, right? So the best time to plant the best time to cut your nitrogen fixers is going to be right before they flower or when they're flowering, but before the seeds become established, okay? And I'm even gonna just sprinkle some pigeon pea seeds right here, and if they grow, that's just wonderful, because Tony will chop and drop them. Cool, so we got Crotalaria. This is called sun hemp. This is a great nitrogen fixer. The nice thing about it is it produces seed pods, and if you break ground, if you stomp a luhe down, you have open ground, you can throw the seeds around and they'll grow and suppress the growth of other weeds like Coster's curse. So they have weed suppressing compounds in them, allelopathic compounds.
You've probably seen them before. They call them rattle pods. They make the little maraca sound when you Great nitrogen fixer. They have a similar flower to perennial peanut.
It's yellow.
The yellow is actually like the favorite color of bees, I guess. So awesome for bees if you guys end up keeping bees.
Carpenter bees
so what
too,
you-
right?
Yeah, carpenter bees love them.
What you guys were saying earlier is ideally your method is to come in before you know you're gonna plant in like a month, and you make the mound and you have your shade crops
Right,
planted
already
around, and
going.
then do you guys throw down like sun hemp cover crop?
Yes, if
Totally.
we can. If
Yeah,
we
That's the
have it, then
optimal way to
yes.
do it, because then
Right.
it gets a full coverage, right?
Right, so it would be like, yeah, if you just pretend this pigeon pea right now. Yeah, just like I'm putting the pigeon pea seeds in.
Yeah.
Like this is the optimal time when you have this bare soil to do the
Yeah.
total area seeds.
Because then if you come in a month in advance, you're giving the time for all those fungal pathways and everything to just
Totally.
establish themselves. So you just pop the fruit tree and it's already going into a fully functioning system.
Totally.
Right, but mainly the concern is the shade, so that way it doesn't burn. Because especially we're moving towards the solar eclipse now, so every the solar solstice. So every day the sun is getting more intense, so it's more likely to burn your new plant if you don't have enough shade for it.
And your sunlight here is actually more intense than it is at sea level, believe it or not. It's like 10% stronger here, so something to keep in mind. Right.
So yeah, we picked this spot large part because we knew we were planting a smaller tree here. You can see this is half the size of the Mame Sapote that we planted. So we just really wanted to prioritize having some shade that's already in place. So this spot was just a good spot for it.
So we stuck our nitrogen fixers in. We're putting our coleus in, which actually is also a pollinator feeder. The bees do like the flowers. I'm just throwing them on. And then we have the Chinese rainbow. We're selling cuttings of these. This is a perennial flowering plant. So once it starts flowering, it flowers 365 days a year. So it's really great for the bees.
Especially carpenter bees. Like at our place, we had no carpenter bees when we first got there, and they're the ones that pollinate our lilikoi vines. So we actually found that the Chinese rainbows were they always have a flower on them, and the carpenter bees loved it. So you can see, we're not babying the coleus at all. We're just throwing it on the ground and then putting dirt over it because coleus is tough. It's still going to grow through that. It's better than it being so exposed and drying out that it dies. So you're better off covering it and just putting a bunch of soil on it than having it too exposed to the sunlight.
But you could be laying down a mat of peanut and then bury that. That works really well.
Yeah, with perennial peanut as well. And we can talk about perennial peanut. Here on Big Island, there's a lot of hype about perennial peanut. There's just a lot of misinformation that we have found where, they kind of talk about it as like a be-all, cure-all on grass. It is a good ground cover. It's not a very strong nitrogen fixer. It only fixes a little bit of nitrogen. And that's only when it's fixing nitrogen is only when you cut it. Otherwise, it's absorbing nitrogen from the plant that it's growing around. So it's actually competing for resources than fixing nitrogen. So perennial peanut is awesome. Don't get me wrong, it is awesome. It's just really slow growing, so you have to spend a lot of time weeding it to begin with before it to get fully established. But once it's fully established, it's awesome. It's that green mulch. It folds up its leaves at night, so when you do get the dew at night, then all of that little bit of moisture is going into the ground. Don't get me wrong, perennial peanut's awesome. It's just takes a long time. And it's not the nitrogen fixer that you think it is.
And it's not super drought tolerant. So if you do, yeah, go ahead.
So we have a really established peanut field,
Yeah.
and me, Ari, and Maikai was digging through it, and we're like, we should ask you guys about this. There's about 15 layers of vines
That's
on top
awesome.
of each other,
Yeah. So one
which
thing
is great.
Yeah.
But do you recommend? So he's weed whacking it,
yeah,
Awesome.
and okay, good,
I would weed whack it because that's releasing the growth hormone,
cool.
and then it's actually giving back nitrogen to the system. We did hear that it's around the third year of it being established is when it starts kind of some of those vines start dying off and it starts giving back nitrogen.
I think it's quicker up here.
Okay.
It's
like
more
2 years.
dominant. It's like less. The weeds around it is less stronger.
Yeah.
Just like personal experience.
Yeah.
It's just once it catches on, it takes over. Like
Right,
pretty
because
quick.
they are really sensitive to, like, they don't do as well at sea level because they do not like to dry out. So actually up here, you guys can grow perennial peanut better than at sea level.
Dew is amazing up here. Like, you know, when we have those droughts.
Mountain Dew.
Yeah, the Mountain Dew. when we have those droughts up here in Mountain View, the dew keeps the soil pretty moist, especially if you got shady ground covers like perennial peanut. Down at sea level, they were hurting a lot worse during that last drought. So yeah, it's a great plant. It just sometimes gets overhyped, and there are a lot more aggressive ground covers. Like sweet potato actually fixes nitrogen through a different means that isn't totally understood. But there's other nitrogen fixers besides your legumes. So sweet potato, Sudan grass, the Metroxylon palm, the sago palm, aka the ivory nut palm. So there's other sugarcane actually fixes nitrogen. So yeah, perennial peanut's great, but I would experiment with sweet potato. Experiment with other ground covers that actually produce more carbon than the perennial peanut. I wouldn't say it's like the fastest carbon builder. I would say you got a bunch of Mexican sunflower that's going to build soil a lot faster. So yeah, again, not knocking it, but every plant has its use, you know.
Syntropic versus permaculture.
Okay, so permaculture. In permaculture, kind of the first thing you really focus on is the contour of the property. So how the land rolls down the hill, and then how we can capture the water, right? So everything's built on berms and swales. As you know, our soil here is so rocky and we get so much rain, we don't want to necessarily build berms and swales. So we can do what's called Syntropic agroforestry, which is a new type of agroforestry out of Brazil. I highly suggest doing some research because a lot of the stuff we were talking about today, we understood from researching it, like the plant growth hormone, etc. So basically, in Syntropic agroforestry, you have your lines of fruit trees in rows, and then you have your support crops in concentric rows as well. And everything being in rows is really nice because you can access all of your fruit trees really easily. You can get, you know, if you can get a truck and trailer through, speeds everything up. So, you know, permaculture looks really nice when you have everything in a circle, banana circles, and you know, you just kind of stick stuff in wherever it looks cool. Like, that's great. I'm not saying don't do that, but if you want to get really organized and intensive and grow more food, I do suggest just plotting straight lines. Having the rows where you can access with machinery speeds everything up. We've done so many jobs where, you know, no offense, Tony, but if we could have if we could have gotten a wheelbarrow through that door into this coop, this process would have taken a fraction of the time. So build your paths, and even, you know, we grew up from corn country, and the thought of stuff in straight lines was like disgusting to me when I first moved here, because I've spent multiple seasons of my life in cornfields and it's so boring, and you know, but actually now that we've farmed for 3 years and like struggled hucking, you know, soil through the mud, like carrying stuff in, it's just like to just unload it off the trailer is a dream, right? Or even just a wheelbarrow, right?
You're also creating more edge space.
Exactly. Edge space
And so
is
you
fertile.
can take advantage of that and grow annuals.
Totally.
Right.
You can grow annuals. You could grow, we're going to do silvopasture, which is you grow rows of grass and forage for your grazing animals in between each row of fruit trees. And they're just eating the grass, pooping it in place, fertilizing your fruit trees right in place. So
You
then
have
you
to
can
fence them, of course.
But you don't want to grow Wedelia as a ground cover if you're doing
Actually, we
that.
use Widelia a lot.
It has its place.
Really?
This
But
rain
I
is here to
heard-
stay, guys. I
I
think
heard that
it's not a passing one. I don't know.
Well, thank
Wedelia
you.
makes sheep infertile. It
Yeah,
might just
so
be
you
a-
don't want to feed it to animals, but it
Yeah,
actually
for silvopasture I'm talking about.
for sure for silvopasture you do not want Widelia, but it is really aggressive. So we actually use it for ground covers.
Okay.
But hey, folks, thanks for coming to this demonstration. We're gonna go out of the rain, but we can keep talking about plants and yeah, keep learning together.
Great.
Alright everyone, that is it for our workshop series. I appreciate that you guys have stuck with us for the long journey, and I most importantly hope you learned something. I want to say thank you again to Tony from Off Grid Neighbors. Not only did he get us started on YouTube by having us do a tour of our own place on his channel, but he's the one who actually hosted and set up and organized the workshop that we just posted the video from. So once again, Tony, thank you so much. You've been a great inspiration. You've been a great motivator. And of course, thank you everybody who came to the workshop. We learned a lot from each other and together, and I couldn't have asked for a better group. Now that we're finally done with this workshop series, we can start doing other videos, which is really exciting. So the next video is either going to be we have a tour of Oscar Jape's rare fruit nursery coming up. We're really excited about that one. We've got lots of footage from that video, so it's hard to condense down. So that'll probably be at least a two-parter as well. And also on the menu we have an air layer video with Ava from here in Puna. She's a fellow nursery person with a degree in horticulture. So we have exciting stuff coming on, and thanks again for supporting us, you guys. For a new channel, this has been really crucial to have so many people encouraging us. So aloha and thank you. And thank you.